Welcome to REI Closers Podcast. Got Alex and I back here doing another deal breakdown. This one is a crazy one and is actually all the way in Washington. We're in Texas. Never saw this house, but we had some boots on the ground. It was, I think, 4 people a part of this deal or more. No, there was
5.
Maybe 5 or 6. There's a lot of people that went into this deal, and this was so cool. It came from a door knocker, knocking pest control, probably 6-7 months ago.
Got under contract in September, I think.
September of 2025, and we just closed like last week in February of 2026.
Yep.
Crazy. So
Felt longer than that.
Awesome deal. Ended up working out. Kind of go down. It was a novation, a million different things that almost took this completely derailed. It went from basically being like, sweet, this looks like it could be a good, cool deal, to nothing for like 4 or 5 months, to all of a sudden this is happening, and then haywire, and then basically getting it closed. So, if you are hopping on this and you're listening, like, this is going to be, how do we handle a novation? What is the importance of contracts, especially in things like that with attorney and facts and doing novations, which is basically wholesaling a deal on market to retail buyers, that are getting financing, and what happens with like power of attorneys, people in hospital, paying for things before moving, joint venture agreements, all these different things that happen to get this deal across the finish line. So where was it?
Far north Washington, like almost in Canada.
Okay, so yeah, we're like, what was it, like 30 minutes from
It was like 20 minutes from the border.
Okay, and so what happened is Jackson, shout out Jackson, follows me on Instagram along with a lot of the door-to-door community, and he's knocking pest control, I believe, and knocks on this door. He'd seen some of our content about, how we buy houses, anyone that needs to sell quick, and he just sent us a DM. This is actually exactly how Isaiah got his first wholesale deal, who works with us, and the guy was just an older gentleman that was like, yeah, I need to sell it. Yeah. And his wife, yeah. But he was like, oh, I just need to sell it. And, basically DMs me on Instagram. And this is hilarious. Femi, who's sitting behind the camera right now, is on my Instagram DMs and messages him back, and sitting there with Armando, who works with us and does all of our disposition and closes some deals for us as well. And basically, since Armando was right there, the guy's like at the door, he just like threw Armando on the phone. And there's probably more to this that I'm gonna have to use Femi, but it didn't happen immediately like that. We ended up like messaging back and forth. Armando gets on the phone with the seller, and this is like all happening from Dallas, Texas, and this kid is in what was the city? Everson? Everson, Washington, which is almost Canada. So that was like step one. I'm actually kind of curious. We're just gonna include Femi's sitting here right behind the camera. What was the time frame between like him knocking on the door and Armando getting on the phone with the seller?
It was like 3 days, because it didn't actually happen like that.
Okay.
I was talking to him. He wasn't on the door. He was actually talking to me about it. I said, go back. He said, I'm gonna go back tomorrow. He goes back, knocks on the door. Seller doesn't answer. So I'm like, do you have a card on you? And he's like, yeah. I was like, write this number down on the card. It was one of the random high-level numbers we have. And he stuck it I was like, stick it in the door, like the door frame, like y'all do. I was like, stick it in the door frame, and then go back tomorrow. He's like,
that's crazy. That
same day, the seller calls the number, goes to Armando, and then Armando closes it that night.
That's crazy.
So to sum up, if you couldn't hear Femi.
Yeah, to sum it up, basically, this is even crazier. So he's DMing us on Instagram saying, hey, I think I have a deal, just because the homeowner basically said, I want to sell my house. And Femi's on my Instagram and tells him, go back to the house because that could be a deal. Put this note on the door that has our phone number. It routes to our CRM. And the homeowner calls the number. It goes to Armando, who's on our team, and Armando closed the deal. So basically, it wasn't even like he just said, oh, okay, this guy said he wants to sell quick, and DMs us. We tell him what to do. He goes, put the phone number on there, and then we get the phone call from him. So it was like like, hey, I might have a deal, reset the lead. Then Armando gets the call, gets it under contract. And this is where it was pretty cool is we don't know the market, right? This is like really anyone can get a real estate deal if someone's motivated and needs to sell their house quick, because we don't really know the market, but we know how to run comps. We can see what houses are selling for based on the square footage, size, area. Armando, sees his house is in pretty good shape. This older couple just like is retired and wants to go get out of this big house. And so they don't take our cash offer. That's probably too low for them, and he pivots it to a novation, just showing, hey, we're going to bring in a retail buyer, help them get financed, do any of the repairs that they need. And they also weren't ready to sell like ASAP. So it's like, hey, this is going to be a longer process.
And their payoff was too high too.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they took out a reverse mortgage. So the payoff was higher than what we probably could have gotten for a cash offer. So more time, more money, and the house is in good shape. So it can get a retail buyer. So that's when we typically do a novation, which would be getting the authorization to list it on the market and sell it on their behalf. They just get the flat fee that the flat number, that we gave them from the beginning.
Yeah.
So that happens. That's first thing. That's like September, was it?
I think it was maybe late August, sometime around the fall.
So I guess fill everyone in like what happens kind of after this, or what does the process look like from a novation? You get under contract. What happens after that?
I mean, we send it to title, you get it listed on the MLS, and from there, you're essentially just wholesaling it on the market.
Break that down a little bit though, because to some wholesalers that haven't done a novation, or some people that are looking at this, like that sounded super simple, but like what are the steps exactly? So like what do we get contract wise?
Yeah, you got
authorizations to get it, and then
we just use our regular 3-page contract. So we contracted it at $550. So we have that contract, send it to title, sellers have signed. You get an authorization to sign listing docs, get that signed and notarized off to the title company. What that allows you to do is we use a self-listing service, either Baycom, I think Baycom's the main one, and just list it on the MLS. And
so what does that cost?
Like $150.
Okay, so we pay a flat fee service, and they list it on the MLS with a broker, but we only pay $150. And our authorization to list, that's notarized from the seller, allows us to sign and deal with offers and listings on their behalf.
Right.
So they're basically like allowing us to do the full concierge service because we have this authorization. We're listing it on their behalf, and
the benefit for them is they don't have to go hire interview realtors. They don't have we're covering the closing costs, the realtor fees, any repairs.
Yeah.
So
oftentimes,
really,
like getting the property
off.
Cleaned out, getting it moved, which we'll get into what happened at the end of this deal, which is crazy. Like the upfront wasn't too hard, right? I mean, you obviously got to close the deal.
The tough part that we're leaving out too is they had a flip phone. They have an email, but I don't think they use it. Isaiah, who we did a wholesale deal with a while back, now works on our team on the CRM side, lives close by. He had just moved there, doesn't have a car. Yeah. So then he's taking like a rental car and an Uber to the house because we can't send any emails or anything. So every time
that's actually true. So Armando didn't really lock up the deal. He gets the verbal agreement.
Yeah.
This is like the crazy amount of steps. Gets the verbal agreement, but they don't have an email. They only have a flip phone.
Drive it to them.
So so just so happens that Isaiah, who's on our team on the marketing side of things, just moved there, gets a rental car, drives over to the house, and now has like the paper agreement, like the contract to get them to sign. And
then we scan it, sign it, yeah.
Yeah, so
the whole deal.
It.
But yeah, it was a lot of steps to even get in communication.
And once he gets that contract signed, that was just a purchase agreement, seller info form. I think he had to go back again.
Do the authorization.
To get the authorization and get it notarized. And so meanwhile, we get this thing up on the flat fee service. We get it listed. We get the pictures, which we had to get scheduled. So typically we get, professional photography?
Yeah, a real estate photographer.
So we brought over a real estate photographer, get real pictures to make it look as best as possible. Try to get the home decluttered as much as they can. And at that point, it was just like it's kind of a waiting game. Like the market, pretty slow in the winter. Also, we don't know this area that well. They're not in a rush to sell it because they're kind of like have all their stuff in there and they need to find where they're going.
It's a big house too.
And I want to say this too because from the beginning, we were kind of like, they handled everything. It was good. It was easy. Like they didn't really mention much about their kids until probably 2 months into it. we're over here trying to bring in the retail buyer and he like had kind of brought up family, but we're like, they said their kids didn't want to buy it because they all live out of state. And he's like, we just want to work with y'all. And so that became a little bit of a touching subject. We're like, well, you told us that they didn't want to buy it. And he's like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like just proceed. So then we proceed and then nothing happens for like
2 or 3 months.
At least. Yeah.
October, November, December, January. I mean, shoot.
Yeah. Like 3 months. Yeah. So we dropped the price a little bit. And then I want to say, do you remember how we had a couple interest like showings, but then eventually someone shoots over an offer and Armando's kind of handling this and takes the call, I believe. And we end up getting this person in there. They make an offer that's actually legit. We counter back and forth. They have some concessions that they want. And so we kind of go back and forth with this realtor on like 2 or 3 counters and finally get this thing under contract in escrow. And I want to say they did their inspection and then they come back with even more repairs that they're requesting, right? So this is really where on an innovation side, you're like handling all this for the seller. Their end, they're just getting the number that we agreed to them with. And we're basically factoring in like realtor costs, closing costs, the concessions that they're asking for, sometimes repairs that need to be done like in escrow that we're agreeing to. Like in their case, I can't remember. I think we just agreed in concessions, but a lot of these things that had to be done so that the person could actually get approved for this loan, get financed, and qualify to buy the house at what we're agreeing to. So we go through all that. We finally come to an agreement. We get it signed and pushed through title, but this is actually the craziest. Kind of break down the buyer coming in and what their situation was, and then our seller's situation.
Yeah, the buyer was selling their homestead. So it was contingent on that selling. It was already in like out of the option period, but their close date was the same close date that we have, because they didn't have a lease back. So like they had to be out of the house the day their house sold. So there was not a lot of room there. And then what was the second part you said?
So basically, I was just thinking their situation. So the person that's buying that we have under contract to buy the house is a family.
Yeah.
But their house that they're in currently is set to close on like the 9th.
Yeah.
So we set our closing on the 9th.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, like we're on a clock because we're like, oh crap, like this is the finally have an offer under contract. But like, luckily, like thank God, the sellers were already kind of getting moved out. The daughter came in town, and our sellers were already moving out to go to the nursing home, and the family started showing up. So meanwhile, right whenever we get this under contract, the daughter of the sellers comes in town from out of state to help them get moved and relocate. So it literally couldn't have been better timing, because they needed to relocate. Now we have this clock on the 9th that we like have to have them out, because we can't lease it back. Like someone's taking this buyer's house, like they're going to be moving in. So that means this house has to be empty that we're selling, because they got to be able to move into it like the day it closes. And to a off-market like seller that we're handling all this for, that's like a lot to ask sometimes, because they don't understand like you close on a property. Oh, I don't have any extra time. I need to like get my things out. It's like, no, like this house has to be vacant. And so now we get this in escrow. And we're like, oh, we got like 3 weeks?
Yeah, roughly.
We're like 3 weeks to try and like basically pack up, and they're already starting that process. So now it's like, okay, if you need help moving, let us know. If you need help like getting relocated, just let us know. We'll help pay for the movers. Like we do that a lot, and we tell them that because it has to be gone. And so as this is happening, the daughter's moving all their stuff for the husband, and then walk through that process maybe, because this was a mess.
Yeah, it was interesting because like usually you're moving a family that's going to another house, so they're going to a retirement community, so they're not keeping all their stuff, and the communication was a little bit like daughter wasn't super quick to answer. I guess it's not a lot of service up there. And so we're trying to figure out like what needs to be moved. There's a pool table, there's piano, there's all this big stuff. What's junk, what's not junk. Having a hard time getting in touch with her. And then I think
what happened was in the middle of that,
they had like some health issues, and then they were over the daughter's over there helping with that, so she's not really quick to answer. And then obviously people need to move in the house. We got to get everything out. So it was starting.
Yeah, it ended up being
dicey.
like, and us not being there. What ended up being crazy is like, unfortunately, the sellers ended up being in the hospital from like someone fell or a seizure or whatever, and the daughter who's in town is kind of like, wait, what's going on? Because like they were like, y'all handle the sale and we don't care. Our kids don't want anything to do with it. Was like the initial like conversation, and then of course the daughter comes in and is like, well, who are y'all? What is the situation? She want to make sure we're not taking advantage of the seller, and we're like, whoa, like okay, we'll meet over at the property. So then we had to send Isaiah back over there.
Yeah.
And Isaiah had to like rebuild rapport with his daughter, which was awesome, because it's like she realized, okay, they're legit. Like we're not here to take advantage of you. We explained the process, and she's like, okay, this is good timing. Like it ended up being perfect because like she's there and now we're selling the house. But she ended up getting power of attorney over mom, who was in the hospital. And so it ended up just being like perfect timing with the daughter there, because now everything was just going to the daughter. And she actually has a phone. She can communicate.
Has email.
And has email. So like her having power of attorney allowed the sale to actually finish. But all of a sudden now we had to get her power of attorney docs to the title company. Isaiah was over there and, built the whole rapport and gets it moving along. And now we're like, okay, there's this 3-week time frame. Basically, daughter, you got to get everything out of this house and like by the 9th. And that's kind of where.
Right. And as the 9th approached, we probably took a little bit too long to start really pushing, saying, hey, like they knew 9th was the closing date, but I don't think they know that like that's the closing date. Like it has to be done. So as we got closer to that date, like a week before, they're like, oh, we're moving some stuff out, but like I don't know if we're gonna be out in time. We're like, that's not really an option. Like these people have got to sell their house and get into it. So what ended up happening is we got to like the weekend before and like daughter wasn't really answering. We're like, oh my gosh, we don't know what's in the house. Like we have no.
I think it was like a weekend, right? We were supposed to schedule a closing on a Monday, but it was like.
Yeah, it was like that Wednesday before. So like 5 days before, we didn't really know what was going on. Answering wasn't the greatest. And so the agent for the buyers was very helpful, very cool. Shout out to her. She was kind of running into an issue where they only had a moving truck rented for that day. What happens if there's still stuff in there? The house isn't clean. And so we ended up getting the buyers an Airbnb for 3 days because they didn't have a lease back on the house that they were selling. So we had to pay for that. We were going to have to pay for a moving truck, but I think they got theirs extended.
Luckily, estate sale company had to get items out of the seller's house.
So the daughter had hired an estate sale company to buy and take some stuff away, which was helpful. And then I guess they ended up getting like a 25-yard cubic dumpster and throwing some stuff away. We have no idea. We still have no pictures, no videos of what's left in the house. So then I preemptively scheduled a junk removal company, and they had gotten like a 30-foot box truck to get the rest. So I had that set up, and then cleaners set up. We also had to board the dogs. So the buyers have 5
pit bulls and 5 kids.
Yeah, and grandparents. So had to get this big Airbnb, board their dogs. It was just not really working. We actually had to extend closing a day. Ended up working out, but I mean,
what's crazy too is we couldn't get a hold of the daughter because she was at the hospital with the parents. Like while all this happening, we're trying to schedule closing, and we're basically just like on a whim, just scheduling this Airbnb for the buyers that the buyers that had to get out of the house, and then the sellers like, we need more time. I can't get all this out, and I'm like, there is no more time.
Yeah.
And so it was just like basically like 5 days of just like, how do we get you out of the house? We'll literally pay for movers. We'll get a junk removal. We're paying for an Airbnb. We're paying for boarding a dog. And like, this deal's not closed yet. Like there was some hostility and like just like emotions of everything happening at the end. And so a full entire house of a buyer trying to come into this new property that like still has 20 years of stuff in it, and like there's 2 days to basically get this done, and it was just hectic.
Yeah. And then the cleaners showed up at the house after the junk had been removed. I guess in Washington you pay before you do the work. They hadn't gotten paid, so they left. And the agent started calling me. We had to get in touch with the cleaners to go back over there. I paid them like half up front, then half on the back end.
That's such a funny thing too. Like I would never think of paying someone before, especially for a service like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, all in all, 3 days Airbnb, dog boarding. Obviously, we paid for the closing costs, realtor fees on that side. So like, takes away a lot of what you're making. But that's part of the service. Like obviously, handle all that. The biggest thing is that would have never gotten done if that house was listed with a realtor on the market.
Which is like kind of the biggest thing is like, okay, well, why does someone take a novation fee? This is a big question wholesalers ask. Like, I'm gonna offer novation, why don't they just list it with a realtor? Sometimes they should. Like if the person has like a perfect house, they like are willing to deal with a realtor, maybe pay for some things in escrow, and it's just like a perfect ideal house. Like, yeah, they may not take a novation. There's got to be some motivation still, but like for this homeowner, when you got people moving into retirement, the house is not updated, right? So it's in good shape, but it needs a little bit of work.
Some TLC.
Yeah, we're handling every communication with the realtor, all of the inspections that they're doing. Like we're paying now for the Airbnb, the move, all these things that like would have never happened for the most part with a traditional realtor, because a realtor's there to sell the house, but like we're stepping in basically as the third party to authorize and pay for everything to get this closed, and we're factoring all that in to the number that we gave them from the beginning. So it's like, okay, we know based on the resale price after closing cost, commissions, and expecting for some things to pop up in escrow, like what, 20,000 in concessions.
Yeah.
After all that's
escrow,
after all that's paid, like you get the difference between all that. So you just got to be able to factor it in. And traditionally speaking, when you're doing innovation, I want to see, okay, what is the as-is sale price? We're just going to sell that as is. Do 90% of it minus your innovation fee, and that's what you should offer. And that's a very conservative, good number, because as is meaning, okay, this house isn't updated. Maybe it'll sell for $630 or whatever it is. And after closing costs, commissions to realtors, you're at like 92%. I say 90 though, because they're probably going to come in with some sort of like, especially right now in today's market, some sort of repair request or concession or whatever. So the 90% just factors all of that in. Your closing costs, realtor commissions, everything else. Take away your innovation fee. Typically we're shooting for 30. And at that point, that's your contract price, right? So it bakes in like price, closing cost, commissions, your fee, everything else. You can make a big mistake and waste a ton of time and not be worth it when you do it based on the ARV and you're like, okay, this house that needs 35 grand in work, I'm going to calculate it on like the after repair value, but that's not, you're not fixing up the property to go do that, right? You know it's going to sell as is at a discount. So you got to factor that in whenever you're contracting, or else you get it locked up too high. You don't tell them that you're bringing in a retail buyer. They see it marketed, you know, and then it just becomes this like your expectation is set so properly that like you're just doomed.
Not
from or it's set
so
improperly, poorly. So you're just putting yourself in a terrible spot, right? The homeowner should know you're bringing in a retail buyer. It's going to be marketed out to them, and you're going to make your money on the back end after they get their cash that you agreed to them to. So I think that is a confusing concept to some people, and it can be a super easy crutch to try and sell that whenever they don't accept your cash offer. But it needs to be like an assumptive sale of the perfect situation. Like, your house is in good shape. You didn't accept my cash offer. Let's see if you can get approved for this. And then you walk right into that number of whatever the higher.
You see the inverse kind of happen a lot of people that try to sell their house on the market that's not in the greatest shape. And then the realtor's not willing to go do all this stuff to get it closed, which makes sense. I mean, you're just listing a property. You don't really have any interest in it. So like, they're not willing to pay for anything that needs to be fixed. If the seller's not willing to pay for it, and then all of a sudden the realtor is going to investors to try and get a cash number, but that cash number is not right. So it's like, that's exactly where innovation is super helpful for homeowners, is that kind of like in between type of property.
Right. Yeah. The outdated ones that just need a little bit of work. Like, we have one right now where it's like, okay, they just need like an AC updated. But yeah, we can handle that and miscellaneous things. But like some realtors too, is they're not willing to negotiate or like understand how to battle back and forth. Like, a lot of these deals, like, is a difference between 20 grand of us conceding and us just being like, no, we'll do this, this, and this, because we understand what needs to be repaired and what's necessary and what doesn't. And then they're like, okay, cool, we'll do that. Like, I think of the one in Carrollton where she wanted us to do the entire plumbing system. And the inspection comes back and I'm like, plumbing system's not working improperly, it's just old. And I'm like, let's just do a clean out. And
$500.
Yeah, we'll do a clean out and show you that it's good. And they're like, okay, we'll do that. And so it's $500 instead of a $29,000, new plumbing system.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we're asking to ask. It's like, why not ask? Yeah. And then we just said, no, we're not doing that. Yeah. So what else happened on the rest of this deal?
I mean, that's about it. So, just kind of mass chaos at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how a lot of innovations are. I mean, most of them that we've done, like we had one out in, where was it, Tyler or Terrell a couple of years ago. It was the same thing. It was FHA, which is always going to have more repairs, where I think we spent like $10,000 to $12,000 before it closed.
In escrow, right?
In escrow, so like, it's in escrow,
But they're under contract, they're set to close. Then these are repairs that were being made, requested by really in FHA. It's like the inspector saying, hey, this has to be done. So it's like, we know it's going to close in a sense.
Yeah.
It's just that these have to be done before closing.
Right. So you end up going the extra mile for people that aren't.
Right. That aren't able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of that deal. Like, that just listed with a realtor would have been, the deal would have turned sideways 5 or 6 times. Overall, how many people were a part of this deal? So we had Jackson knock it and Pest Control. Femi answers my DMs, which is not always Femi.
Yeah.
But you could be talking to Femi.
Yeah.
Jackson, Femi, back to Jackson, tells him to go put the note on the door. Then Armando answers. Armando gets it under contract, sends it to our transaction coordinator, Amy.
Isaiah.
Oh, shoot. And then I missed Isaiah. So Armando doesn't get it under contract. He gets the verbal agreement. Isaiah goes over and gets it under contract. Then once we get a contract scanned back to us, send it to our transaction coordinator, who then, after that, get it listed. Agent brings the buyer, and we all just basically at that point are fully fledged in to try and get this deal under or get it closed across the finish line. A lot of times, once the buyer steps in, a lot of those nitty-gritty details are something that we're kind of dealing with.
Definitely.
So, yeah, that was a crazy deal, and novations can end up like that a lot of times. Expect to get it marketed, to have offers come in with repair requests. There's a reason this person's probably agreeing to a novation. The house is not in perfect shape, and anytime someone runs an inspection on a house, it looks like you'll never want to buy the house because there's always going to be something that pops up. So right now in today's market, they're almost always coming in with some repair requests or concessions.
Yeah, it's also something that we've kind of learned is paying attention to, and this is whether it's a flip of your own house or your own investment property innovation, is pay attention to the other agent. You can see how many houses they've sold. You don't want to judge a book by its cover. Everyone does. You should probably kind of figure out how experienced they are and what their communication style is, because there are agents that will send a repair. I made a Facebook post about this the other day, kind of venting. We'll make send over a repair request, and then you send something back, and they will just terminate right there. Nothing, no answering the phone, no.
Yeah, I think that's one point of like, how do you tell this to the agent? I always tell them basically what's happening. Like, if you can list it, if you get a deal at a good enough margin, like, and you can list it with a realtor, it helps a lot because they treat it as like a realtor to realtor.
Knows a novation.
Yeah, that realtor that's willing to work with you as a novation knows how that works. But and generally speaking, I say, hey, we're just working with the seller to get it sold, and we use a flat fee service if I have it listed there. So I'm just like transparent with them. But yeah, you do need to make sure they understand, like, we're willing to work with you whenever this happens, but like, here's what we're requesting back.
And I'm trying not to bash agents, but there are a lot of agents that I swear they're not trying to make money. Like, I don't think they realize that if a deal closes, they get paid. So I think what Ben was saying is there are times where I think the investor brain and the realtor brain are on two different wavelengths and two different communication styles, where, like, I know, like, Adam, shout out Adam, he's definitely helped us on some of these weird JV innovation deals because he can handle some of these agents a little bit better, I think, because he kind of knows how they think and know that they're not
super, they're much more by the book.
Yeah.
They send over the repair request, you send back, and then they just terminate. And I'm like, well, actually, we would have probably done something like that. Yeah, but we're just trying to negotiate back and forth. Yeah. And then they just terminate the contract. And then at that point, the seller's already like, oh, no, I'm out. And it's like, well.
And not having your client, like, a lot of it's client management, where, like Ben just said, if you looked at a home inspection, especially some of these inspectors that, like, I think they don't do the greatest job. They kind of just point out stuff that's a little bit not really there, but it's besides the point of not having proper expectations with their clients. So they'll just show them an inspection report and not say, hey, like, these are always going to make you not want to buy a house. Take this with a grain of salt. Like,
I remember my first house I ever bought, shout out Brandon, helped a ton with that. Like, it was in the peak of the market and everyone was like buying, but like, I was scared every time I looked at an inspection report. He's like, oh no, this is like, don't worry about this, worry about this. Like, and he was just like, I remember I really wanted to buy this house, and the inspection report came back and it's like pointing out all these things. And he's like, dude, like, this isn't a big deal. This isn't a big deal. Like, this much, this is this much. And it I would like ease my confidence, and I was like, okay, like, cool, let's move forward. Yeah. Otherwise, I literally never would have wanted to buy any house in Oklahoma because they're all built in the 60s and have something that is like,
it doesn't really matter where it's at, but if you don't set that expectation with your client, like, it's not going to work.
Yeah. But with that being said, you guys have novation deals or deals that like maybe could have been worked as a novation and they're in good shape and the seller didn't agree to your cash offer and you kind of like are in that middle tier area. Like, hop in our community, the pre-foreclosure Skool community. You guys have so many opportunities for deals like this, especially in pre-foreclosure, where like they bought it in 5 or 6 years ago. There's not a ton of equity, but there's a good enough shape or enough equity to do innovation or a joint venture agreement. There's a lot of creative ways you can close deals. So if you have something, you want to partner with us to either get it closed or find the buyer, we can joint venture with you, just like we did with Jackson, Isaiah, and over 40 other people you can see in the Skool community in the classroom resources. So if you are talking to sellers, you have novations that you need help closing or finding the buyer, working this whole deal, we joint venture with people all the time in our community. You can hit the link in the description, the Preforeclosure Skool community. We do live calls every single week diving into pre-foreclosure. So if you got leads, especially people that are behind on payments and maybe don't have enough equity or don't accept your cash offer, there's so many creative ways to get deals done. So make sure to join the Skool community, and we will see you guys on the next video.